Meetings are kind of like potluck dinners. You invite people to bring something to the table, but not everyone shows up with a dish. Sometimes it's because they didn't know what to bring, or worse, no one told them they should bring anything. That's why I think we should talk about creating a space where the conditions are set for everyone to contribute meaningfully at meetings.
I'm Stephen Belenke, a coach to leaders, a facilitator to executive teams. And this is Spare Me, a short, sharp dive into the heart of human dynamics for anyone who's ever asked themselves, what's actually steering the ship here? And by ship, I mean you, your habits, your reactions, and your choices when the water beneath you gets choppy. I'll try to cut through the noise, poke at some blind spots, and maybe even make you laugh along the way. Because leading teams and companies is serious business. But it doesn't have to feel that way. So buckle up, 10 minutes or less, and I'll leave you thinking, why didn't anyone say it like that before? At the very least, I'll spare you the fluff, because you've got real work to do.
But note, I didn't say everyone will contribute, or necessarily should. I said where the conditions are set. The key distinction here is that setting the right conditions gives people the option to contribute without forcing it. It's about creating an open, welcoming environment where participation feels natural, not mandatory. The truth is, not everyone needs to chime in on every topic, but they need to feel like they could if they had something valuable to add. It's like hosting a party. You set out snacks, you make sure there's good music, you arrange enough chairs for everyone, but you don't drag each guest to the dance floor or force feed them dip. You create the conditions for a great time. But whether they bust a move or just sip their drink quietly it's really up to them. And that's the sweet spot. Freedom without pressure. And I gotta say, calling on people out of the blue to force participation, that's amateur hour. Creating the right conditions isn't about forcing people to talk. It's about making space so they want to. But you can't just call on someone and expect some magic in the room. There's an old Jewish joke. A rabbi sees a man praying at the synagogue, talking to God like they're old friends. And the rabbi says, "Why do you pray like that?" The man shrugs, "Well, God already knows what I think. No need to hold back." Meaning, people will share meaningfully when they feel safe and comfortable. Otherwise, it'll just feel forced or awkward. See, the thing about meetings is they aren't just about sharing information. They're about unlocking perspectives and insights and ideas from the collective team in the room. But too often, a handful of voices dominate, and the rest, well, they either check out or stay quiet because they don't feel safe or prepared to jump in. And here's the thing. When people feel sidelined or uninvited, you lose the benefit of their unique input. And meetings that could have been a space for meaningful collaboration and breakthrough ideas turn into just another item on the calendar, where the only thing you really accomplished is setting another meeting. Congratulations. So let's talk about the don'ts of engaging people in meetings, the things that really kill engagement. 1, don't cold call people without warning. Calling someone out of the blue feels like getting ambushed at a family reunion. No one likes it. Sure, some folks can roll with it, but most people will either freeze or give a surface level answer just to make it through the moment, just to survive that meeting. It's also a bit like asking your mother, what's your favorite child? Sure, you might get an answer, but it'll probably involve a guilt trip and a long explanation. People need time to reflect before they can contribute thoughtfully. This isn't creating engagement, it's creating anxiety. Here's another one. Don't let the loudest voices dominate. We've all been in meetings where 1 or 2 people do all the talking until everyone else stops trying. It's not just annoying, it sends the message that other voices don't matter. And worse, it reinforces a pattern where the same voices always fill the space. Here's another one. Stop asking generic questions. Like, any thoughts? That is not a question. It's a conversation killer. It's vague and it puts the burden of starting a meaningful discussion on the people least likely to jump in. I'm going to be blunt here. It's lazy on your part to ask that question. You're not providing value with that move. You're perpetuating mediocrity. Sorry. Let's get to the do's now, though, okay? There's some really good ones. In other words, how do you create space for meaningful contribution? What actually works? Here are a few ways to pull everyone into the conversation without making it feel forced or awkward. 1, set expectations before the meeting. Preparation is an invitation. If you want people to contribute, give them a heads up. Send an agenda in advance with specific topics or areas where you'd love their input. This tells people you have something valuable to offer and we're counting on you. Here's another one. Ask targeted questions. What's one challenge you see with this approach, guys? Or from your perspective, what would be the biggest roadblock? These kinds of questions signal that you want to hear specific insights, and they make it easier for people to jump in without feeling put on the spot. Here's another one. Create opportunities for smaller group discussions. Not everyone thrives in large group settings. Breakout groups or smaller side conversations allow people to engage without the pressure of performing in front of a crowd. Then, when the group reconvenes, those quieter voices are more likely to speak up. There's a next level of that. The next level of this is providing time for individual reflection, processing, and sharing. Even small groups don't necessarily bring out the very best input in everyone. Sometimes forcing collaboration is just that. It's forced. Some of the most innovative ideas I've encountered in a room came from the discerning, methodical person who needs to isolate themselves first, then share. Here's another idea. You can use a round-robin approach, that's common, but with a twist. If you do want to hear from everyone, make it structured and predictable. I mean, anyone can say, we're going to go around the table and each person will share one thought. That's typical. But the twist is allowing people to pass if they need to. This gives people a chance to prepare mentally, which lowers anxiety. The key to making this work, though, is for you as the leader to get that people who process quickly and always provide input don't necessarily have the greatest ideas. I try to remind myself that if someone on my team passes 4 out of 5 times, but that 5th time provides the breakthrough idea, they just exemplified the very best our company has to offer. Simply put, it's about quality, not quantity. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, model vulnerability. If you want people to be open, show them how it's done. Be the first one out the gate. You can even say something like, I'm not entirely sure about this idea, but I'd love to get your take, and then lay it on them. When leaders admit they don't have all the answers, it gives others permission to contribute more freely. I often say something like, hey folks, I'm just processing out loud, so you'll have to forgive this half-baked idea. All right, bottom line. When people feel like their voices matter in meetings, it's not just about the meeting itself. It becomes part of your culture. It says, we value your input and you're a critical part of the team. And here's the kicker. When people see that their contributions lead to decisions or actions, it builds trust. They'll be more likely to engage not just in meetings, but across the board. Okay, here's a final thought. Balance structure with flexibility. Look, not every meeting needs to have rigid rules about who speaks and when. It's a balancing act. The goal isn't to control the conversation, it's to guide it in a way that feels natural, but intentional. There's this joke about 2 Jews arguing in front of a rabbi. After hearing the first man's argument, the rabbi says, you're right. The second man then gives his side and the rabbi says, you're also right. And then a student overhearing this says, Rabbi, they can't both be right. And the rabbi pauses and replies, you're right too. The lesson here, people can have different perspectives and they're all valid in their own way. A good meeting creates space for those perspectives without forcing everyone to agree or even speak. The best meetings have room for structure and spontaneity. Now, if you want to make this all stick, here's my challenge for you. At your next meeting, try out one of these strategies. Maybe just one. Maybe it's setting clearer expectations. Maybe it's asking more targeted questions. Or maybe it's just creating smaller spaces for reflection and discussion. Pay attention to how the energy shifts when people feel invited instead of ambushed. It's an experiment. If nothing shifts, go back to your old ways and never listen to me again. I'm willing to take that risk. And if all else fails, just remember, meetings are like potlucks. If you want people to show up with something good, you've got to make sure they know what's on the menu. Because meetings, they're not just about calendars and conversations. They're where the magic happens. Or, where the train wrecks. But let's aim for magic. Okay, that's enough of that.